Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, where today we are talking about 10 smart transfers your club should complete this summer. Coming up on today's show, we talk about why Florian Wirtz could be a game changer for Liverpool.
I think this is going to be the biggest Premier League arrival since Erling Haaland joined City.
Whether Bryan Mbeumo could fix Man United.
I think Mbeumo, at the moment, in his position, is one of the better players around Europe.
And which club could be the perfect fit for Jack Grealish? I want to see Jack Grealish go to any other club and have the freedom that he had at Aston Villa. So the club I'm going to suggest. Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody. And joining myself and Mikey McCubbin today, it's last week's guest. He's back again, Lyes Bouzidi. Lyes, you've had an interesting week, let's say.
That season's done. Let's leave that in the past, man. Let bygones be bygones, man.
The Lowdown crowd want to know, what was it like in Bilbao?
Awful. Seriously, one of the worst days of my life. Like, the trip, I don't even want to speak about that. I mean, the lack of sleep. And then the performance on top of that, just an awful, awful day. And like I said, let bygones be bygones. Today is a new day. It's a new dawn. And yeah, let's talk about anything other than Man United, please.
Sunderland in the Premier League.
It happened, man. It happened.
Well done, well done.
I didn't really see it coming. We played well for about 80 minutes in the last 3 months, but it was the crucial 80 minutes. We've got back there. I was really honoured to be there on Saturday. It looked pretty unlikely at half-time. I think we rode our luck massively.
How excited are you for the what is it, Tyne-Wear Derby? That's what you guys call it, right?
Tyne-Wear Derby. Yeah, it could be massive. I mean, we had an amazing record against them in the Premier League when we were both there. I think we won 7 in a row. But then we played them in the FA Cup a couple of years ago, and the gap was big.
I think a few things have changed since the last time we played.
I think the cliche of it all goes out the window on Derby Day. I don't know whether that comes true when they've been spending so much more money. But yeah, it's epic to be there. It's still not really sunk in. I'm still in disbelief. But yeah, the Stadium of Light back in the Premier League for next year, and the Sunderland team could be joined by a number of new players in the Premier League as well, because the start to this transfer window has been absolutely epic from a neutral's perspective, at least. I mean, let's kick off with the big story of the last week, which, not Man United, not Sunderland, but Florian Wirtz potentially going to Liverpool. This feels massive for not only Liverpool, but the Premier League, the calibre of player potentially arriving.
I mean, 100%. Anytime a player of this calibre comes to the Premier League, it's a major coup, but even looking at it from a Liverpool perspective, in my lifetime, I think it's the first time I really see Liverpool make this kind of signing regarding one of already the established world-level players. I mean, if you were to conjure up a list of the top 10 players in world football, I think you could very well make an argument that Florian Wirtz sits there. And that's not typically the signing that, again, in my lifetime anyways, I've seen Liverpool make. They're typically the club that go for the guy who might just be on the cusp of superstardom, or a player with immense potential that, if nurtured correctly, could really become one of the best players in the game. Think Luis Suarez, think Fernando Torres at Atleti, think Mohamed Salah at Roma. But for them to go out of their way to sign a player that is already an established superstar of the game, it's very, not bizarre, but it is different. And I think more than anything, it's a sign of intent, because Liverpool are just coming off winning the league, but it shows that contrary to maybe the past few seasons where they have won something but maybe rested on their laurels, it really has shown that they're not just content with where they're at. They want to continue elevating the standards. And I think that's what the dynasties in the Premier League do, the dynastic teams like the Man Uniteds in the past. They don't just sit on that one Premier League title. They think to themselves, how can we get even better to stay on top? Manchester City under Pep in their best years, I think they were really doing that. I mean, they won the league with 100 points and added Riyad Mahrez. Like, that's what the best teams do. So I think from Liverpool, it's a real sign of intent. And I think for the rest of the Premier League, it's really, watch out. Like, this is the level you got to reach now.
Absolutely. I suppose with Frimpong coming in as well, potentially Milos Kerkez, Liverpool getting a lot of top business done early. I mean, Mikey, in terms of the fit at Liverpool, given that I think many people were expecting them to maybe look for a striker, the left-back, Frimpong's already arriving. Are you surprised that they are dropping what will be a huge fee on Florian Wirtz, or is it just such a good opportunity that you have to get it in?
I think it's just such a good opportunity. I think, Arne Slot alluded to it, post-match on Sunday, this is something that's been in the works for a long time. Like, all of their transfer business has been. They've been discussing it throughout the season. And to be honest, this is the kind of target that we would have been talking about a bit earlier if Salah had said, I'm going to go to Saudi this summer. I think Liverpool are basically having the summer that they would have had anyway if they'd lost Trent, as well as Trent, Virgil van Dijk, and Mohamed Salah. Like, they are building the team for when those players eventually leave. And yeah, Florian Wirtz, if all goes to plan, is going to be is going to be that guy for Liverpool. I think this is going to be the biggest Premier League arrival since Erling Haaland joined City. It's such a statement of intent, and I also think I'm doubtful whether this move would happen if Liverpool hadn't won the league this year. I feel like just that it's that thing of like, you know, you're joining the Premier League champions under a coach who has had a near flawless record in his first season, has, you know, taken to replacing a character as big as Jurgen Klopp so easily, it seems. I just think nothing could have gone better for Liverpool in the last 12 months in that sense. So, and you've got someone who, is already, you know, will be a huge upgrade on Szoboszlai and Jones in that 10 role, but also potentially could replace Salah on the right, depending on how Liverpool are going to set up in years to come. And then, on top of that, Frimpong coming in, question marks about what his role is going to be in this Liverpool team. But then now you've got Wirtz coming in, who had like an amazing connection with him at Leverkusen. It almost doesn't really matter where Wirtz is going to fit in terms of like what exact role he's going to play. He's that good a player that, you know, you can just kind of make it work for him, to be honest. And the fact that City have missed out on him, Bayern less so in terms of like a direct rival to Liverpool, because obviously they're not in England, but they are a Champions League rival to Liverpool. It just feels like they've really stolen a march here 100%. This summer.
And I think with Bayern as well too, that's such a startling one, because this is a Bayern Munich signing if I've ever seen one, in terms of going and looking at who the best player is at a rival club in your league, poaching him and making him one of the biggest superstars if he already isn't already. Like, we've seen it so many times, the likes of Ballack, we've seen it with Lewandowski. Like, this is just what they do. So this almost seemed like a home run for them. But I think credit to Liverpool, who clearly have attracted him to a level that he's turning down the likes of Pep Guardiola. He's turning down the biggest team in his country. For him to look at Liverpool and say, you guys are the most desirable destination for me at this current moment, I think the groundwork that they've kind of set the last 12 months in positioning themselves to be this kind of team when the opportunity strikes is terrific from all involved.
Almost it's easier to go and join Bayern Munich. You're obviously staying in that country. But I think tactically, like, Musiala, Elise, Wirtz playing behind Kane, that's a lot of ball to feet players. I think there wouldn't necessarily be, with Sane potentially leaving, Gnabry, Coman as well, that kind of stretching, kind of pacey winger. And actually, it feels interesting in that Man City, I feel, need Wirtz more than Liverpool.
I agree.
But you are taking away from who I think will probably be, if not Liverpool's biggest rival next year, but their top two biggest rivals, along with Arsenal probably next year. And you're denying them when they need to sign a player to replace Kevin De Bruyne, the best creator the Premier League has seen in the last 5-6 years. And unless Foden's going to get back to the levels that we've expected of him, and, you know, I'm not ruling out that being a possibility, Wirtz would have been great for City. I think if he'd gone to City, that is a game-changing signing as well. It kind of puts City right back up there. So to take away from City, strengthen yourself. And I agree with you. I think at points this season, Szoboszlai is a great player, but Wirtz is at another level in every facet of the game. He's one of my favourite players to watch in world football, and I think it's a masterful signing. And they've had the option in previous years with Caicedo. They went deep to go try and get Jude Bellingham as well. They've missed out on top players, Tchouaméni too. This is taking one of the best players in the world in their prime to a club on the up. And I think Liverpool fans should be incredibly excited if they manage to get this done. Let's talk about a player that is potentially leaving Man City. It feels almost definite that Jack Grealish is going to leave Man City. He's only played 144 minutes of Premier League football in 2025. He played in every round of the FA Cup. Then he doesn't get off the bench in the FA Cup final. Echeverri gets on in his stead. Foden also played instead of him. And it just feels like it's coming towards the end of his City career. And I like him as a person. I like watching him play at his best. I liked him at Aston Villa. But you can't paint this signing as anything other than a bit of a disaster, quite frankly. He's never scored more than 6 goals in a season for City. £100 million, of course, as well. The most assists he's ever got in a season was 11. That was in 22-23 in the season they won the treble. And Grealish played really well in the back half of that campaign. But just ever since then, not been at the same level whatsoever. 4 assists in one other year, 3 assists, 5 assists. And look, it's not purely about numbers, but it's also about consistent impact in games, how dangerous you look. And Doku, for example, has just consistently caused more damage than Grealish and kind of taken games by the scruff of the neck. And I want to see Jack Grealish go to any other club and have the freedom that he had at Aston Villa. So the club I'm going to suggest, and I don't know, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, is actually West Ham. I feel like West Ham's spent a lot of money last year. didn't have a great season whatsoever. The impact of Graham Potter probably wasn't as big as people were expecting, really, finishing 14th in the league. If it wasn't for Jarrod Bowen, I think they would have really struggled this year because Kudus wasn't at the same level. Paqueta seems like really off his game. There's that ongoing case against him as well, whether that's disrupted his form and confidence as well. Jack Grealish is 29 and he turns 30 in September, and it depends what sort of fee West Ham would have to pay. But you want to see Grealish, and I imagine him from a personal perspective. You don't want to leave the Premier League on this note. If I was Jack Grealish, I'd want to go to West Ham, prove myself once again as one of the Premier League's best players, get back in the England squad with a year to go as well. So I think West Ham's not potentially the worst fit for him as well. Like on that left-hand flank, we haven't seen much of Somerville this season at Premier League level, I think, as well. Fulkrug's going to play a lot more games next year as well without the injury issues they've had there. So Lyes, would Grealish to West Ham be a sort of club that you can see him going to, or do you think he can aim higher? No disrespect to West Ham.
First of all, I want to speak on Jack Grealish. I think the numbers narrative for me with Grealish doesn't really apply because when he was at Aston Villa, and at one point at Aston Villa, especially his last season, I think you could have made the argument he's one of the best players in the league. Mm-hmm. That's why they spent 100 million. He still wasn't a player putting up crazy numbers. That's never really been his game. So I don't really look into that regard as, has Jack Grealish been a success? I look at the move to Man City, and I was someone who, from the word go, didn't really think that stylistically it was a great fit because of the way Pep tends to deploy his players. And the way City play, I always feel is very risk averse, and it kind of does limit those kinds of maverick individual players from playing their best individual game. It typically gets the best out of them from a statistical point of view, i.e. Riyad Mahrez, for example, hit numbers that he never did at Leicester. But in terms of seeing the best of them as individuals and kind of letting them express themselves, I always do feel like they're kind of hindered. So the move to City, I never felt really made sense. And from the word go at City, I feel like he has kind of almost been overawed by the entire situation that he's at Man City. He's with the best players in the world. He's with Pep Guardiola. And I feel like you've almost kind of seen a shadow of his former self. And even in his best year, the treble season, I felt like we were gassing up a lot of things that for £100 million player, we really shouldn't be overrating as much as we're talking about ball retention and defensive work rate, which is great. It's needed. But for that kind of fee, that's not what you buy Jack Grealish for. So I do feel like the move never really made sense, and you're really seeing now that he is on the outside looking in. West Ham wouldn't be the worst move, but I would actually like to see him at Spurs, to be honest with you. I think Spurs could be a potential destination. They have a lot of really young wingers. They have Odo Bear. I mean, let's see what happens to Matthias Tell if they end up buying him. Son seems to be on the way out as well, too. I think Spurs could be a potential destination that kind of just gets his career back on track, playing in the Champions League as well too next season, as we know. I think he still has a level where he can be competing in the Champions League. Like West Ham wouldn't be the worst move, and I think West Ham are a lot better of a team than their position this year suggests. I do expect them to bounce back, but yeah, that sort of club I think could see a revival of Jack Grealish, because let's not lie here, he is a quality player. There's so much talent when it comes to Jack Grealish, but I also think it's a matter of finding a place and finding a manager that can kind of just get him enjoying his football again, because honestly, for the last 3 years, I've looked at him and he's winning a lot. That's the reason he left Aston Villa to go win a lot. But has he personally enjoyed his football as much as he did at Aston Villa, where he was the guy, he was the main man? I don't think he has.
Difficult to imagine that he has. I mean, Mikey, let's talk about some incomings at Man City.
Yeah.
Because it's been busy in terms of the rumours going on there at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think on Grealish, it was kind of telling how irritated that Pep's kind of been with questions over him, and I think that almost kind of shows how much the writing on the wall is there, because it has been a frustrating time for him. Yeah, I think he was one of those signings that in 2021 was, that was City. That was almost City trying to do what Liverpool are doing with Wirtz, in terms of consolidating themselves. But yeah, it felt like. Yeah, it's kind of been emblematic, I think, of City's transfer business of the last few years. And this summer, it feels like they will get it back on track, just given the amount of top talents that they are being linked with. It feels like now finally Pep has more of an idea of how this City team will probably look going forward. It's going to be the last incarnation of Pep City. When they signed Grealish in 2021, the Erling Haaland deal wasn't over the line, and he's come to define the way that they play. That Doku signing doesn't happen unless, Erling Haaland is already there. The Savio signing as well, like they are looking to become a bit more like an end-to-end team, as we're seeing the Premier League become stylistically in general. Yeah, I think that's why, someone like Ait-Nouri is quite an interesting signing. To see City sign a proper up and down wing back, we haven't seen that in so many years, you know, given the amount of kind of centre back come full backs that they've signed over the years. I don't quite know what Ait-Nouri will bring to this City team that Guardiola already brings, or already doesn't bring, sorry. So that one, I don't know is how much of a smart signing that is, although I guess it takes him off the table for another, a number of other top clubs, because I do expect him to be on the move this summer, whether it's to City or someone else. But the ones that really stand out to me are Jashari from Club Brugge and Rayan Cherki from Lyon. I mean, okay, Cherki isn't necessarily at Wirtz's level, but I think in terms of a maverick, creative, attacking midfielder, there aren't many players out there better than him. I mean, among under 23 players in Europe, like Cherki does actually top Florian Wirtz when it comes to creativity. And so if you're looking for someone to come in and just plug the De Bruyne gap and just be like, go out there and just create chances for Erling Haaland, then I mean, there aren't many better players out there than Rayan Cherki right now. And so, yeah, in many ways, it doesn't surprise me to see Man City so heavily linked with him all of a sudden, especially at that price as well. If City can get him done for 20 to 25 million pounds, it's just like, yeah, again, like this is a player who's going to be on the move no matter what. Why not, when you've missed out on Florian Wirtz, get in someone who is not a quarter, like he is certainly a much more than a quarter of the player that Florian Wirtz is. Like I think that's the thing with this potential transfer. And from Cherki's perspective, why not go and play under Pep? Like I think I can't think of. I mean, we were chatting about it off camera, Lyes, and you have your doubts, but I still think that Pep, as an attacking player, I still think Pep is an amazing coach to work under. And even if you're not going to be as much of a main man at City as you are at Lyon, similar to Grealish going from Villa to there, you're still going to learn so much. And whoever Pep's replacement is as a coach, because we expect that probably to happen in 2 years' time, maybe then you become the Rayan Cherki at Lyon, who is, going past players at will and taking the game on your own and becoming the real star in that team. So yeah, I think for all of the Mavericks who have gone to Man City and have been dulled a little bit by the system, I still think there's a lot of potential for Rayan Cherki there to come in there and really give the City attack that jolt. Because after all, as well, if there was one player who was able to just do whatever he wanted in this City system, it was De Bruyne. Like, he was the one producing, left-footed screamers from 30 yards in games in which City was struggling to break down defences. He was the one, producing crazy balls that cut out, 3 or 4 defenders at a time. Rayan Cherki is capable of doing those kinds of things. And is now so accomplished in the final third and is still so young, has such experience for someone at such a young age. I really, really like him. And then for Jashari, who's much more of an unknown, he's a defensive midfielder who plays for Club Brugge.
Had some outstanding games in the Champions League.
Yeah, and that's what's really raised his profile. And in fact, he signed a new contract. He only joined them last summer, but then they extended his contract in January just so I think they could get a decent fee for him this summer. And so he could be, he's being looked at by Dortmund as well. A host of top clubs are looking at him.
Leverkusen as well.
Yeah, Leverkusen, where he'd be a brilliant fit. He could cost over 35 million euros this summer. But again, it feels like it would feel like a smart signing for City, in that they could steal the march on some of those clubs. And again, like when we look talking about defensive midfielders at top clubs these days, the first thing you think about is, are they a destroyer? He's not that, but he is an amazing ball progressor. His ball carrying style has been likened to Declan Rice. Another player who City have missed out on in recent years. So yeah, he looks really, really exciting, especially in a summer in which, I'm sure Adam Wharton's name is going to be talked about a lot. And, you just can't you can't sign a player of that kind of caliber or with that kind of skill set in the Premier League now for less than £60 million, really, because there's such a dearth of like top young defensive / kind of ball progressing midfielders, basically deep line playmakers. And Jashari very much is a deep line playmaker who also excels in the final third. So yeah, I think he'd be one to keep an eye on for sure. And of course, we're talking about kind of smartest signings here. We're going to be talking about a lot of big money signings as well. But in terms of a smart signing, I think Jashari would be great at City.
Yeah, he had some outstanding games, I remember, against Atalanta and then Villa as well, and playing against top midfielders in both games, and really did shine in both of them as well. So that'd be an interesting one. I mean, Lies, we're talking about Cherki potentially going to Man City. Cherki was linked with Man United at points this season, but the player that does feel more likely at the moment to go to Man United alongside Matheus Cunha is Bryan Mbeumo. Is that a signing that excites you?
Let me just say this on Cherki, right? I think Cherki is the biggest market opportunity in the window. For that price and for that talent, it's an absolute no-brainer, because this is one of the most talented players in world football. And as a playmaker in the final third, I think he's practically mastered the final third. He knows every single pass he needs to make. He knows how to beat any single player he needs to. He's MP pedal as well too. He can play with his right, he can play with his left. So this is a guy that can unlock defenses at will. The reason I'm cautious about City for him is because, and I've watched Cherki over the last 4 years, I know this guy's game. The guy doesn't defend. Like, he is an old school playmaker in the truest sense. Like, he's a guy that you give complete creative license to. He kind of sits in that little pocket in the right half space. You give him the ball and you let him get to work. But then when you lose the ball, he's not the hardest worker. So when you look at a guy like Kevin De Bruyne, his industry is also a reason why, as well as, of course, his efficiency, why he's given that free role at City. For Cherki, I just don't think Man City under Pep is the move for him. Like, if anything, this guy's, in my opinion, the anti-Pep player. I would not see him succeeding at City in that regard unless you see drastic changes to his physical side of the game, his athletic side to the game, and the defensive side of the game as well, too.
But you don't think if, say, like they buy Reinders this summer as well, who is that industrious player and also can contribute in the final third? I guess the thing with City, I feel like Pep hasn't been in this position with City yet. And, you know, with the end, you know, in a couple of years probably for him at City, I feel like maybe he's just going to have one final throw of the dice and just.
I think it's a risk because
let's have a.
You look at Haaland; he's not a great presser. Haaland is not the best presser up front. You look at Cherki; not the best defensive-minded player either. Like, where does Foden kind of fit into all of this? I just think for Cherki, if him and his entourage are smart, I'm looking at the club that can kind of find the best situation for him, who can maximize the best of Rayan Cherki's skill set. And I'm not honestly sure if that's Man City. I'm not sure who that is, but I'm not sure at this current point that's Man City. But to just go back to your Mbeumo question, this is an interesting one for me because I think Mbeumo is a top player, and I think what he's done this season, honestly, the last few seasons, but this year, really getting the chance out of Ivan Toney's shadow, him and Wissa have just taken that opportunity and flown with it. I think Mbeumo, at the moment, in his position, is one of the better players around Europe. Like, when you look at the caliber of right wingers, I think there's a clear hierarchy with the likes of Yamal, Salah, Saka. I would put Olise there as well, too, these days. I think Mbeumo is floating around the tier below it. I don't think he's at their level. That's no shame. Those are the best players in the world. But I think he's kind of in that second tier around based on the season he's just had. And look, we have to see who becomes like a suitor for him. Arsenal clearly have that position unlocked. Liverpool as well too. But I would find it really bizarre. I'd be happy, but I'd find it really bizarre if he ends up at Man United, because with all due respect, I mean, I'm saying this about my own club here, but is there not better out there for him? Like, I would really
think
find
Newcastle.
Yeah,
if that's about it. I think.
But I think if Newcastle, what about a Dortmund or a Milan, or let me get Milan?
Yeah,
not in the greatest position either.
But who's going to pay? I mean, this is someone who's going to probably cost up to 50 million. I just don't know if there is a club in Europe that takes that punt on him.
And if that's the case, then yeah, I guess it's a huge opportunity for Man United, because they can kind of go after him with little to no competition because of the circumstances. And if they can get him, I think he's a top player. I think the question mark lies, first of all, where does he fit into this team? Is it as a 10 or is it as a wingback? I would assume it's more as a 10. I think this is a guy you want as close to goal as possible. And you look at the output that he's provided this season, the proof's in the pudding. But does a dual 10 relationship between himself and Cunha, what does that look like? Because as much as I love Matheus Cunha and his ability to carry the ball, I don't think his playmaking side in terms of creating chances is really his biggest forte. And as for Bryan Mbeumo, I think similar. I think he's an incredible dribbler. I think he's got a great eye for goal, but he's not someone I really particularly think of in terms of setting up teammates, in terms of finding players with brilliant passes. That's not really his game. So is that really the best you can do at number 10? Is maybe Bruno Fernandes next to Cunha maybe a better balance? How does that look like? But when you're talking about opportunities in the market, 50 million for Mbeumo is great. I just don't know if Man United are in the position to be focusing on market opportunities or really looking at priorities. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I do think it's a slightly odd fit. In some ways, I feel like wing back is almost where he would fit best in this United system. If we're going to have Ahmad playing as the right 10, which I would be probably more comfortable with.
Ahmad, though, his future is at right wing back. I think you look at the best games he's played this season. I actually think he's played better when he's kind of facing the pitch in its
and I guess he's more of a creator, and Amorim wants his wing backs to be creators. But like, I just think Ahmad is a better dribbler than Mbeumo. I think he's probably better in tight spaces. I think Mbeumo is an amazing transitional player. I think that's what really sets him apart. But I do worry that his numbers are being inflated by being the man that Thomas Frank has entrusted in this Brentford team. Like, it's the first season that we've really seen his numbers pop in a massive way in the Premier League.
How many did he grab last season? 13, 14?
Yeah.
No?
I think he scored 9 last season.
Was it
in
9
the Prem?
last season?
Yeah, I think this is the first season he's done.
Maybe I'm wrong. Did he not
double
have a
figures.
season a few seasons back where he hit double figures or no?
Yeah, maybe in all competitions. I might be wrong.
Yeah,
I might be wrong here,
yeah.
but either way, I'm still. It's not like his underlying numbers have ever been like super amazing, and I guess it's just maybe slightly being burned by the Højlund coming from Atalanta, where his numbers really popped, and Atalanta are another team where they've got this manager who has fully defined the club in a way that not very many other managers around Europe aside from Thomas Frank, I think you could say that about. And we're yet to see a player leave Brentford for a bigger club in the Premier League and replicate the same kind of output. So it's just a little bit of an unknown for me with Mbeumo, but I do think that I think it is a sign that United are planning something on that right side that we haven't seen yet, in terms of probably having, like you say, like whether it's Ahmad, whether it's Mbeumo, whether it's someone else, having an actual attacker play at right wing back on a permanent basis. And I think that is something that will hopefully transform United's style of play. And if they were to sign Mbeumo as a second 10, then really the onus is going to be on whoever plays at centre forward to then be almost as much of a chance creator as a goal scorer, because like you say with Cunha, like he's kind of being brought in to score score chances from nothing, which is fair enough in a team that doesn't create many chances. And you could kind of say the same about Mbeumo, like he doesn't actually receive that many high quality chances at Brentford, but his clinical score rate this season has been insane. So I guess in that sense, like Mbeumo could be a good fit, but it's just hard to really piece together what United are going to look like at the end of this summer.
Every summer.
Is like what's the future of Rashford? Is anyone going to take Rashford at the price that United are quoting?
If you're dropping 110 million pounds on Cunha and Mbeumo and you haven't sorted out Rashford, Anthony, Sancho, you just don't know what money you're going to bring in. And I get it, because these are great market opportunities, and you're clearly targeting Premier League players, trying to get in there ahead of anyone else, which on the back of finishing 15th, like if you sign Cunha and Mbeumo, I kind of respect at least your ability to get big deals done quickly.
You can't question the ambition, yeah.
No, but it's just a lot of money to spend in a position where you do have Bruno that can play there, where you've got Ahmad that can play there. You still need to kind of make the Mason Mount signing.
I think Bruno's the one you got to look at, right? I mean, with the looming £100 million bid from Al Hilal, you're talking about where's the money coming from. That might be. In terms of kind of like, that might be it. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess also the Garnacho. If United get decent money for Garnacho, what that does for PSR is obviously massive as a quote unquote academy graduate. So I think that will probably be the key. But I don't think that Bruno talk's going to go away.
And we talk about a Premier League player getting a move to a big club in Man United, but a club going through the worst period of their recent history. Another Premier League player in Kaoru Mitoma, Mikey, is getting linked with Bayern Munich, which is obviously a very different club in a very different situation.
Yeah.
we were talking about how if they had brought Wirtz, that's a lot of ball to feet players, and they potentially need a pacey winger. Do you think that they've seen that and gone, well, maybe we do need someone like Mitoma?
Potentially, but I kind of see, I don't know whether Mitoma is just that either. Like, he is a very dribbly winger, but he does like to pick the ball up from deep. I love Mitoma. I think like this would be such a fun move. Like, I think, you know, there was so much hype around him in his first full season at Brighton, and then, you know, that injury hit season in 23-24, I think kind of took a lot of shine off him, and the fact that he's just turned 28 as well, I think may have put some clubs off. But honestly, I think he'd be an amazing signing for Brighton. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Again, big upmarket opportunity. He could be available for 50 million euros,
which is crazy. That's
they rejected a lot in January.
It was 90 million,
90
something like that.
So, like, I think, like, I mean, that's his reports. I'm sure Brighton will try and push for more. But like, if you can turn Matoma's head and he's not going to sign a new deal, then maybe this is the summer that Brighton have to sell him. And I think this is probably the summer that Mitoma, if he is to go to a bigger club, does so. I'm surprised that in the last year or two that bigger Premier League clubs didn't come in for him, because he's so proven in the Premier League. I think he's been one of the most underrated players this season. Definitely. You know, you saw the impact that he made coming off the bench against Liverpool. I know it was a kind of Liverpool who were getting over their Ibiza trip, but nevertheless, like, he's just such a special he's such a special player to watch. I just absolutely love him. And yeah, like, I think if Mitoma joins Bayern, then for me, they probably have the most entertaining forward line in Europe. I just think like Elise, Musiala and Mitoma, I think whatever happens, you just kind of make that work. And given the, you know, the outgoings from Leverkusen this summer, you know, one of whom is coming to Bayern as well, I just think it feels like the Bundesliga is in danger of becoming a cakewalk again for them. But like, just to see him in the Champions League alone, like, I just would absolutely love. And yeah, despite his age, you know, he's only been playing professional football for 5 years.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say.
He's a late
He's writing
bloomer.
his thesis not long ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy that they'll have a player that was playing in the Championship with Reading on one side and a guy that was writing his thesis on dribbling like 5 years ago. It's nuts.
They've done a little Premier League grade the last few seasons.
Yeah.
Bayern of Kane, Olise, Païnia,
all
Mitoma.
coming from struggling mid-table Premier League clubs at the time.
It's really interesting. But yeah, Mitoma, I completely agree with you. I feel like he's been one of the most underrated players, especially this season, right? Maybe that first year when he kind of took the league by storm, it was like Mitoma sanity. Everyone was in love with the story. But I think over the last 2 years, he hasn't been bad. Like, he's still been pretty good. Yeah. And I definitely agree. I think that is an opportunity. I think Bayern, that left-hand side, I completely agree with you that although Wirtz, in terms of what he represents, is the Bayern signing, I actually don't think it's the end of the world potentially, because similar to you, I remember the Euros in particular. I don't really love the Musiala Wirtz chemistry. I feel like one always kind of ends up suffering for the other. And for Germany, that was Wirtz suffering for Musiala. I look at the potential of maybe a Leao going to Bayern, maybe a Barcola in a year, or Rodrigo, Mitoma. I think those would definitely, from a profile point of view, improve Bayern maybe a little more, even though Wirtz, as you said as well too, is that kind of opportunity that you don't really let slip.
And let's talk about another player that could be leaving Brighton, in Joao Pedro, Lies, and he's been linked to Newcastle. Newcastle probably need to look beyond Callum Wilson as Alexander Isak's backup. Do you like the idea of Joao Pedro going to Newcastle, or would you probably, well, I don't want to put words in your own mouth, but would you suggest that they go for more of a natural right winger, or maybe a more natural attacking midfielder? What are your thoughts on Joao Pedro to Newcastle?
Joao Pedro is a great player, and I think this year has been a real coming of age season for him. Although obviously there's been some issues at Brighton towards the end of the season. I think he's a top player, very intelligent. I've always loved those big players, but with really technical skill set, and Joao Pedro kind of is that. As for Newcastle, I don't really see it. I think they're going to have Isak for at least another year. Maybe in terms of planning going forward, that's a potential. Although Ekitike was someone they loved a few years ago while they were kind of going for Isak, and he might be a potential replacement if he's still on the market in a year's time. I think you nailed it. I think a right winger is what Newcastle have been crying out for the last few seasons. And although Jacob Murphy this season has done an incredible job of kind of lessening that blow, I think he's had a real season to remember. I do think going into the Champions League again, that kind of marquee player in that position is what Newcastle are missing, with all due respect to Murphy. I think a continental star coming to Newcastle and elevating that front line even more so than it already is I think something that they've really missed. I love Harvey Barnes, for example, but prioritizing him a few years back over a position that they desperately needed never really made too much sense for me. As useful as Barnes has kind of been off the bench, I think they've needed a right winger for a long time. And yes, Almiron had that little patch a few seasons back. Yes, Murphy has kind of done a role this season. I think the next evolution for Newcastle is upgrading that position.
I would agree. I would strongly agree.
Who would you go for in that role? Any names?
What, in that right wing position?
Right
I mean, Bryan Mbeumo feels like he makes more sense for Newcastle than Man United.
That'd be a
in
top
many
move.
ways.
And Mbeumo, Isaac, and Gordon on the left. That's an
That'd be
attack
fun.
right there.
That'd be fun. That feels like an attack which would be deeper in so many more positions to be able to, sustain Champions League football and Premier League. Because even Bruno Guimaraes was telling publicly to Sky, like, we felt a bit short when we were in the Champions League last time, which was kind of very honest. And it could be conceived as brutal, but he was meaning we had injuries and we just couldn't sustain both. So they definitely need to strengthen.
I think, that's the thing. I honestly see Newcastle signing up to 3 attackers this summer. Like, I think they're going to sign at least 1 striker. There are reports that they might even sign 2. I think that's where the Joao Pedro links have come from, because he can operate as someone who can play in. Well, I guess he can play as a striker, but like really he's great at facilitating the striker. And, at Brighton this season, he's kind of been playing as an attacking midfielder, really. So if you have him to come in instead, if you have him playing instead of Joel Linton in games where you need to break down deep blocks, which is what they're going to have to do more and more, given how much they've sustained themselves towards the top of the league, there's even talk of them being in the title race next year. 2 more games in the Champions League. Like they do need a lot more depth and they need more options. And so that's why I think at least from a stylistic point of view, I quite like the Joao Pedro signing, because they don't have anyone like that. They don't actually have like a top creator in that team. I think Anthony Gordon creates 1.9 chances per game, and that's the most that any Newcastle player manages. So someone like Joao Pedro, who can do a bit of everything, and is also very hardworking off the ball. I think he ranks in the top 10 players in the league this year for possessions won in the final third. I think he kind of fits Newcastle quite nicely, and also he's got the connection with Joel Linton and Bruno G from Brazil. So I do like that. But right wing has to be the priority. But if Newcastle have like upwards of £200 million to spend this summer, which reports are suggesting, then they can kind of afford to really revamp that forward line. Yeah, I quite like it. But in terms of the money that would take to get Joao Pedro out of Brighton, it's not necessarily the most like astute signing. It's not exactly like they're plucking someone from nowhere. But they almost signed him 2 years ago before 3 years ago before they signed Isak. Like that had the here we go treatment from Fabrizio Romano.
Really?
Like it was done. Like I was kind of looking it up earlier and I'd completely forgotten about it. And I just went on X to try and get some more information on where this potential deal could be, and the top result was here we go, Fabrizio Romano, August 2022, and I was like,
and
what?
It wasn't one of those fake accounts.
No, it wasn't one of those fake accounts. And 4 days later,
they signed Fabrizio No Mano,
it collapsed, and they signed Isak. And I think effectively signed Isak instead.
Fair. I'd forgotten that myself as well. Okay, let's talk about. I mean, we've already touched on him a few times in this episode, but Kevin De Bruyne leaving Man City, absolute icon. And he's potentially going to Napoli, which is just something that I didn't necessarily see coming, but I really like it, if I'm totally honest as well, because he was strongly linked with Chicago Fire, strongly linked with Saudi Arabia, but I do think he's got more to give at this. Like even in the last 6 months when he's got his body right as well, you've seen him decide games at the top level for City, and I think he will be a big absentee. I mean, Napoli's president Aurelio De Laurentiis, who's a big character, has said publicly our intention is to sign him. They're supposedly lining up a €10 million per season contract, which is less than half of what he's paid at the moment at Man City, which feels like a pretty good arrangement for Napoli. And I was in Trafalgar Square with the Sunderland fans on Friday night, but Napoli obviously won the league on Friday. Scott McTominay scoring a sensational goal in that, and actually Lukaku's goal was brilliant as well. And look, the way Inter have been a little bit up and down in Serie A, putting a lot of eggs into the Champions League basket, rotating quite heavily, although their rotated sides have done pretty well in the last few weeks, but there's been a few slip-ups. Napoli deserved champions, and I think not having European football obviously so beneficial for Conte, who's the king of the league campaign. And he's managed in Serie A for 6 seasons. He's won the league 5 times. It's absolutely insane.
I think he's the
Antonio
greatest
Conte.
Serie A manager of all time.
It's
I genuinely think that there's been some legends in that game, but everywhere this guy goes in Italy, he leaves his mark. He started the Juve dynasty, left, came back, ended it with Inter, left, joined Napoli in one season, lost Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia halfway through the season, still won it. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. For 1 year,
Yeah.
it's going to be 1 year.
Yeah.
That 1 year is going to be a ride. And then from there, you never know.
Well, that's the thing. Apparently, he is, kicking up a little bit of a fuss about
Yeah.
transfer business, wants to know what their plans are
I think
in
he's
the
going
future.
to Juventus.
Yeah, and it feels like Juventus is a strong possibility as well.
Put
but
all your money
if
on Juve
anything's-
to win it next year.
Yeah. If anything's going to persuade you to stay, it's Kevin De Bruyne arriving. I feel like that is for a Serie A league that, look, Serie A is a top league. It's very, very competitive, but it does not have quite the same intensity of the Premier League. I mean, every player that arrives in the Premier League does just say, not necessarily about the quality week in, week out, but the intensity, the pace the game is played at. I think Kevin De Bruyne in that league, I think it could be really, really fun to watch. And they've needed a kind of natural creator because, obviously, as Lyes said, Kvaratskhelia left in January. He was their kind of enigmatic, versatile, could do things off the cuff. David Neres isn't quite that player. Politano's had a good year on the right-hand side, but Kevin De Bruyne playing centrally, feeding balls through to Lukaku, who can lay it off to McSauce running onto it. I like it. I like it a lot. And I think De Bruyne, even this year, up until a few weeks ago, he was second for expected assists in the entirety of Europe behind Rayan Cherki.
So
still a phenomenal player to watch as well.
Wow.
So De Bruyne to Napoli, where he could supposedly be joined by Jonathan David, who feels like an excellent rotation option for Lukaku as well. So Antonio Conte, maybe he will stay. Let's see. Okay, we've just got a couple more to mention. Hugo Ekitike to Chelsea, McCubs.
Yep.
Chelsea, like every seemingly Premier League club, looking at Gyökeres, Šeško, Ekitike. But the reports are that Ekitike might be further along the line than some others. He's also being strongly linked with Liverpool. Do you like Ekitike to Chelsea, or do you think they need a more of a guarantee of instant performance?
I just don't know. I don't know if Chelsea can get the guarantee. I mean, it kind of depends, really, doesn't it? It almost. I mean, first of all, like Chelsea getting Champions League football is a massive boost. They can offer that to whoever's coming in. That's something that they haven't been able to do. They weren't able to do that last season. Like they weren't able to do that the season before either. It's huge for them, and so it does mean that theoretically they can go toe to toe with Arsenal and Liverpool for those targets. But I still think as a striker, if you're Arsenal's number one target and Chelsea also want you, I still think you lean towards Arsenal if in the same with if it's Liverpool and Chelsea. So I still feel like Chelsea may have to settle for whoever those two clubs don't go for, because as much as quiet as it seems around Arsenal at the moment, like they have to sign that big number 9, don't they? Especially given how City and Liverpool are starting this transfer window, like strengthening so much. They're in danger of being left behind a little bit. So I think with Chelsea, I think Ekitike I think is a good option. I think he's proven himself at this point, especially the fact that we've seen him playing both with Marmoush and then post Marmoush going to City, and his level hasn't really dropped at Frankfurt this year. He was such a precocious talent when he was at Reims in Lyon, and then didn't quite work out when he went to PSG. I wonder if he, were to have returned to PSG this year, whether it would have been slightly different, playing in a forward line that wasn't so Mbappe dominated. And I know Ousmane Dembele, really made that central role his own, but I think Ekitike's dribbling ability, his ability to open up space for others, his ability to make chances for himself as well, I think just makes him such an interesting proposition in a way that Gyökeres or Osimhen are just goal getters. I think Ekitike is someone who I think could link up with someone like Cole Palmer, and that could be a really interesting relationship. The thing is with Nicholas Jackson is that he's, I think he has shown real promise in his first 2 years at Chelsea, but I think it's clear both with injuries and with inconsistency and just ability to put away chances, that with Chelsea need to be in a title race in the next couple of years, and I don't think you can really rely on Nicholas Jackson for that as a starting number 9. I think he's a great squad player. I think he can split minutes with someone like quite happily in this Chelsea setup, but I think you need someone who's just got a bit more technical ability, and I think Ekitike has that. I guess the other question around Chelsea this summer is like what's going to happen with the wing positions. Because I'm still not overly convinced of their options there. Noni Madueke has probably had the best season of all of them. So yeah, like I think Ekitike I think he's as sure a bet as you can get at this point. It's just the money. Like it's quite a lot of money to spend on him.
Yeah, Lies, are you like Mikey a bit sort of thinking that it's potentially the end of Nicholas Jackson as Chelsea's starting number 9? Have you been? He was always, particularly last season, it felt like he was constantly being compared to Darwin Núñez. He's obviously won that kind of debate, but do you agree with Mikey that he's probably not title-winning quality just yet?
1,000%. I think, look, Nicholas Jackson has some qualities, and you even say he's won the debate against Darwin Núñez. I'm not so sure about that. I think Darwin Núñez has also had spells at Liverpool where he's looked like he can really kind of kick off and score goals for fun, but both of them are just so frustrating in the big moments. Like it almost feels like the harder the finish they can kind of pull off, but the easiest ones they do kind of seem to underwhelm. And I just think of Nico Jackson's temperament as well too, man. I mean, the incident at Newcastle is just a moment of madness that almost completely curtailed their entire year. And they did well without a striker for the last few games to get over the line, but that could have been a massive, massive moment for Chelsea's top 5 hopes. And yeah, I mean, the issue right now with the striker market, and you talk about guarantees, there really is no guarantee. In my opinion, the only guarantee is on a plane to Saudi Arabia very, very soon in the form of Victor Osimhen. I think he's the only one of any striker that is seemingly available that you could kind of hedge your bets that would score 20 goals, almost guaranteed. The rest, I think they all have question marks, whether it's Sesko, whether it's Delap, whether it's Ekitike, even Gyökeres. I think back to a few seasons back, honestly, like this might seem like nostalgia, but there was a period, even excluding the likes of Lewandowski and Benzema, those guys, you still had Higuain, who could guarantee you goals. You had Aubameyang, who could guarantee you goals. Diego Costa. There were so many center forwards on the market, and these days, I do think whoever you go for, you are taking a big punt. And look, I don't think Chelsea will mind that. They have taken a lot of punts on a lot of young players, and I think they aren't as kind of gung-ho as they were under Abramovich. It does seem like they have a much more patient approach to the way their project is going. But in terms of guarantees up front, I don't think it exists. I think anyone you go for, there is a question mark.
Interesting. I mean, finally, we're going to wrap up with Jordan Henderson to Sunderland, which is something that I didn't think we'd be talking about on the Lowdown this week.
Hometown hero coming back.
Hometown hero. Look, I think he was at Wembley on Saturday to watch us, and I think it's very easy, given that his future at Ajax doesn't look that certain now, that people are going to say, oh, he should come back to Sunderland. Personally, I've seen a lot of Sunderland fans get very excited about this. I actually don't want this to happen. I think it's not really the Sunderland model. Like, we've got the second youngest squad in the top 4 divisions of English football. We are potentially losing, almost definitely losing, Joe Bellingham this week. He's in Germany, supposedly talking to Eintracht Frankfurt and Borussia Dortmund. And to be honest, if you get moved to either of those two playing in the Champions League, you go with my blessing, man. Like, you can't really debate that he should stay at the Premier League or he should stay at Sunderland for another year, play in the Premier League, because realistically, Sunderland are favourites to go instantly straight back down without knowing their summer business, might struggle to even get 15, 20 points next year. It's going to be difficult to shine. So when you've got an offer of a Champions League club right now, especially if it's Borussia Dortmund, who made your brother an absolute superstar, I'm not saying he'll ever get to Jude's level, but he's a very talented player in his own right. Look, you go to Borussia Dortmund or Eintracht Frankfurt for sure. But signing Jordan Henderson, age 35, whilst there's a lot of romance to it, is the complete antithesis of what Sunderland have been building so effectively over the last few years. Signing players, whether it's Try Hume for about £300,000, whether it's Joe Bellingham for under £2 million, turning them into top players, at least very good championship players with a chance of succeeding in the Premier League next year. And we're already dropping a considerable amount of money and wages on Enzo Lefebvre, who is the right age to potentially sell on for profit in the future. Jordan Henderson feels like nothing more than nostalgia, and he also hasn't been particularly effective for Ajax this year. He's been very much in and out of the side, had that really bad 6 months over in Saudi Arabia. I'm going to say no thank you.
Do you not think that that there is some benefit to having an incredibly experienced Premier League player in there, given what you say with such a young squad? I know he's 35 this year. I know his fitness record isn't the best, but just having a real leadership figure in that dressing room, I feel like if you can negotiate his wages down, do you not think there's any benefit to that?
Maybe slightly. I mean, you look at Sunderland's leaders at the moment, and our captain's Dan Neil, who's a boyhood. He came through the academy there. He's been with us since the League One days. Luke O'Nien as well was a former captain as well. I'd imagine that he's probably going to be replaced this summer, at least as a starter, and maybe Chris Mepham signs permanently from Bournemouth. But I think there's other ways of getting experience into this side without going down the 35-year-old route, who will probably be on quite considerable wages and maybe start 15 games. Look, it's a nice storyline, but what's the
relationship between him and the Sunderland fans? Is he still looked at fondly since he's left?
Yeah, I think same with Joe Bellingham potentially leaving. I think when a club like Liverpool or when Everton came in for Jordan Pickford when we'd just been relegated, most players have been kind of accepted that you're going to fulfill your dreams of becoming a top player.
Then for that reason, don't sign Jordan Henderson. There's an expression for me in football: never go back to your ex. Seriously, it's destined to end in heartbreak. If it's already a nice relationship, they still look back at you, stay away. Keep it like that.
But I'm intrigued to see who we go for now, because we haven't spent a lot of money compared to other sides in the Championship in the last few years. It's generally about signing really young, exciting players, often from Wilson Isidore came from Russia, we sign players from Ligue 2. We shop in interesting places and try and turn them into top players.
What about Dan's? Obviously, it was Dan from
Jadon Dan's. Yeah.
He obviously came on loan, didn't get to play. Would you take him back on loan? Maybe?
Absolutely. I was really excited when he signed on loan, but he signed with a back injury, never got to play, and then went back to Liverpool for treatment. So I don't think he's even lived in Sunderland yet. But I think, given the fact that Liverpool are probably going to sign a striker this year, they'll still probably have one of Jota or Nunez, probably Jota. I don't think he's going to play a lot of football next year. And Liverpool fans that I've spoken to are really excited about his performances in the FA Cup and Carabao Cup.
Like a real gun.
So if it's Mayenda, Isidore and Dan's, maybe we need to sign someone with a bit more Premier League experience in terms of scoring goals as well up there. But, let's see what happens. I'm just going to enjoy it. 38 games of whatever happens. I don't think we'll get battered a lot. We might lose a lot of games, but it's the lack of chance creation at times. But either way, I've never spoken so much about Sunderland on the Lowdown. I think we should call it a day there. But guys, thank you so much for watching this week's show. Let us know what you guys thought about those suggestions for smart transfers. Some we didn't actually necessarily agree with as well. But Lyes, thank you so much for being a guest as ever on the Lowdown. If you want to watch Lyes' stuff, go check out your YouTube channel.
YouTube, Twitch, everything. Yeah, I'm all over the place.
He is everywhere. And thank you very much indeed for doing back-to-back Lowdowns as well. We'll give you a break next week, I think, as well.
Part of the furniture now.
Yeah. But thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.